all we came to be happy again. Back to the river.
Hey everybody, Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records, and this is my response to the contest Robert started. Robert's channel. Robert's on my turntable, and he has a little contest called Changes, and he wants us to show albums from artists or discuss bands that had major changes in their career, either personnel or their sound or whatever. And so here's my shot at it. And I'm trying to do a little 6 degrees of separation here. Each band or artist I have here is in one way or another interconnected with each of the others, at least in this case 5 degrees of separation, I guess, since I've got 5 artists. Okay, I'll start off with the Byrds. It's the first album, Mr. Tambourine Man, and they made huge changes through the years. For the first, I think, 2.5 albums, or is it 3.5, Gene Clark was in the band and was the major songwriter in the band. David Crosby was in the band. Gene left, Crosby left a little bit later, and the Byrds went through all kinds of changes. And there was a period when Graham Parsons was in the band. Of course, Chris Hillman was in the band. I think it was for about 6 albums, And but then the biggest change would have been in the early 70s when Clarence White joined the band. And here's one example of their work. And this is further along from 71 or something like that. And it's got Skip Batten, Clarence White, Roger McGuinn, and Gene Parsons on this. Do I prefer one over the other? I don't know that I do. I think they were all very significant. Of course, whenever you've got Clarence White in your lineup, that's a huge selling point right there. One of the great guitarists whose life ended so tragically. But if I had to, I'd probably say that first 2 albums by the Byrds, that lineup with Gene Clark, David Crosby, Roger McGuinn or Jim McGuinn, Chris Hillman, and who was the drummer, Michael Clark. Maybe that's my favorite. Okay. If you want to learn more about the Byrds and all the different configurations of the Byrds, Mazzy's got a great video about that. Now, when Chris Hillman left the Byrds, he formed the Flying Burrito Brothers, and this is the great album, Gilded Palace of Sin. He formed this band along with Graham Parsons, who had been briefly with the Byrds, and Chris Etheridge and Sneaky Pete on the steel guitar. This is one great album. It is a historic album, I would say, just a wonderful album. But the band went through major changes. They did one more album, and then Hillman fired Parsons for being a butthole, and then they went on and they added Rick Roberts and Bernie Leadon to the band. Actually, Bernie Leadon came in on the second Burrito Brothers album. Rick Roberts, there's Rick Roberts, he came in on this one, and this is a darn good album. Rick Roberts writing most of the material. And then there was another version. Hillman leaves, Roberts leaves, Gib, I never know how to say his name, Goulabo, he's a Cajun, is fronting the band now, Gabi Blow, and he was Linda Ronstadt's band. He was in that before the Eagles were in that. Skip Batten, who had been in the Byrds, is on this version of the Flying Burrito Brothers. This one is called Live from Tokyo, and Sneaky Pete's still in this band. So, and the Burrito Brothers in one form or another still go on. So basically, But basically, I think most folks divided up into the Graham Parsons, Chris Hillman period for those two albums, then the Chris Hillman, Bernie Leadon, Rick Roberts period, and then the Gillibo period, and then anything that came after. I saw them live at a club during the Gillibo period. It's the only time I had opportunity to see them. If you're going by albums, the Hillman Parsons period was the best because of Gilded Palace of Sin. It stands out among all the others. The second album was okay, but and the things that came after they weren't quite up to what they had been. But they had already taken a major dive during the period when Parsons was with them, to the point where they had to fire Parsons. And they weren't real good when they first started, according to books I've read about that period and everything. They were more flash than quality to begin with. They got really good, and then they took a nosedive even before Parsons left, thus Parsons being kicked out. So I guess you'd go with the originals on that one. Okay, now remember on the second Burrito Brothers album, Bernie Leadon was in there, and on this later Burrito Brothers album I showed you, Skip Batten from the Byrds was in there. Okay, Bernie Leadon, the Eagles. I divide the Eagles up into would it be two periods, I guess? The Bernie Leadon period. Bernie Leadon was with them for 4 albums, I believe. This was be their third. I remember getting this album when I was a kid. Loved this album. Leadon left after the 4th album, I believe, and then of course they did the huge album Hotel California and others. Joe Walsh joins. Before that, Felder was in there on this one, I believe, wasn't he? Because he helped write Hotel California. Felder had a falling out. Walsh had joined the band when Felder was in it, and when Felder left the band, then Walsh was in it. To me, it got too slick. It got too slick when Bernie Leadon left. Leadon, to me, was the grounding force in the Eagles. It kept them from going too far into that California slick country rock. You know, country rock for people who don't like country, basically. So to me, really to me the first 3 albums by the Eagles, that's all I really need. Okay. Now, Chris Hillman was playing with the Burritos, was playing in Washington, D.C., and in the D.C. area, Georgetown or something. And he had friends there, one of which was a doctor, a surgeon, who was also a great musician. And when Hillman and the other members of the Burrito Brothers, some of the other members, went over to another club between sets where they were playing, there was a young lady playing, and that was Emmylou Harris. And John Starling, the guitarist and vocalist for the Seldom Sing, was there. They sat down with them. They knew each other, and Starling introduced Hillman to Harris. And then Hillman later, a few days later, introduces Parsons, Graham Parsons, to Harris. Thus that connection was made. But one of the great bluegrass bands is the Seldom Sing. And they've gone through all kinds of changes. But John Duffy was this, and Mike Aldridge and Ben Eldridge and Tom Gray and John Starling were the original lineup. Okay. They put out about 4 or 5 albums. But as I said, Starling was a surgeon, and uh, he couldn't constantly be on the road. He had other responsibilities. So eventually he left the band on good terms, and they picked up a guy who had played with them before and had written some stuff that they had recorded named Phil Rosenthal. There's Phil. And Phil Rosenthal takes the place of John Starling with guitar and lead vocals, lead and rhythm guitar and vocals. And this was a very good lineup as well. This is from '81 on Sugar Hill. And then eventually Rosenthal leaves. The members are getting older and older, and they're still playing together. This is 1988, I guess. Yes, 1988 here. Now Lou Reed, not to be confused with the Velvet Underground Lou Reed. Lou Reed is in the Seldom Scene, and it's got most of the same players. Tom Gray's left, and T. Michael Coleman, who used to play with Doc Watson, is there. But Mike Aldridge is on here. John Duffy playing the mandolin and doing the high tenor vocals, and Ben Eldridge is on banjo. So three of the original members still there by the late '80s. They're really good. They're still out there playing, but I believe only one original member is with them anymore because the others have passed away or have retired. John Duffy, to me, was the linchpin of that group. He held them all together. He was an amazing artist. He passed away a few years ago. So there's the Seldom Scene. Now, that's a bluegrass band. So everybody played with Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys. Everybody was a bluegrass boy. I can't go back and, I mean, I probably could. I'm not going to go back and figure out if any of the members of the Seldom Scene ever actually were full-time members of the Bluegrass Boys. I don't know for sure. I don't think so. But I'm sure that they played on stage together. They jammed together and were fill-ins occasionally when Monroe needed one. So that brings us to Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys. And the definitive lineup that basically created bluegrass was the lineup that included Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs and Cedric Rainwater and see, now I'll try to call all the names and I'll mess it up. But from 45 to 48, this is the band that created the framework for bluegrass. Everything that came after was based on this to one degree or another. So after Scruggs and Flatt and Scruggs left, then Monroe had no trouble picking up other musicians. It's a rite of passage in the world of bluegrass to have played in Bill Monroe's Bluegrass Boys. So, you know, most of his albums, it's hard to piece together exactly who was playing on which album. You had so many artists that played and who played in what recording. It's hard to tell these days, but there's been an effort to document that. But so I guess you'd say Flatt and Scruggs period and post Flatt and Scruggs period. I love it all. I can't really say one or the other, but that 1945 to 1948 period, it created the mold which everybody else used to go on into bluegrass with. So that's a look at my 5 bands and changes they went through, and I think I have linked each band to the other in one way or another. All right, so I'll leave a link for Robert's channel, and remember, everybody, be kind to your neighbors. It's a small world out there because we're all neighbors. Take care.